Night 2 of the WWE draft is over. Let's talk about it. With the first pick in round 1, Imperium, which was Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser, were drafted to Raw. Notice that Giovanni Vinci is officially not part of Imperium anymore. Happy to keep Gunther on Raw. I don't know if he's going to run it back for the Intercontinental title or move on to the World Heavyweight Championship at some point. But him and Ilya Dragunov, who we'll get to later, are on the same brand. Things are looking good. SmackDown's first pick was Jade Cargill, who was an absolute star. Of course, hers being on SmackDown makes a lot of sense. She's kind of in a tag team with Bianca Belair. They have a tag team match at Backlash, so if and probably when they win at Backlash, I think they keep the titles on SmackDown together. Speaking of that match, Io Sky, Dakota Kai, and the Kabuki Warriors, Damage Control, were drafted to Raw. Your boy called it weeks ago. It makes a lot of sense. I'm glad to see a change in scenery for them. They're going to be awesome on Raw. And to end the round, SmackDown selected Kevin Owens, who's also currently in a tag team feud, so him staying there makes sense. I wouldn't have minded Kevin Owens on Raw, but I feel like he still has a lot of matches left on SmackDown and a little bit of unfinished business with the Bloodline, so we'll see where that goes. In the next round, CM Punk got drafted to Raw, of course, and this was a big move. Makes a lot of sense because he's tied to Drew McIntyre, who also got drafted. We'll get to that later. The Pride, which is Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits, got drafted to SmackDown, which was fine. I didn't mind that. I kind of wanted them on Raw. It would have been nice, but because of how stacked Raw's draft was, they kind of had to be on SmackDown, so that's okay. Speaking of Raw's draft, here's one of our only big surprises of the draft, which I called correctly. Braun Strowman returning to WWE Raw. With all of the injuries in WWE right now, it made sense to bring some guys back. Braun Strowman's been on the hot seat, not in a bad way, but like he's been ready to go, like up on deck, ready to go, and now's the time. He returned on WWE Raw as well. With kind of a new look, he looks pretty jacked. He seems to be a babyface as well, so I'm excited for Braun Strowman's run. Probably at the World Heavyweight Championship. It makes sense. There's a lot of big hitters on Raw, so he's gonna have some good matches lined up for him. Speaking of big hitters, how about Tiffany Stratton getting drafted to SmackDown? Obviously gonna be a part of SmackDown moving forward. She's got a big role over there. She's got a triple threat match for the Women's Championship actually at Backlash as well. One of my favorite superstars at the moment and one of the biggest fasting rising stars in the industry. So very excited for Tiffany Stratton on SmackDown. And arguably the biggest and best part of the draft, ladies and gentlemen, the LWO have been drafted to Raw. The feud is over because they got drafted to Raw and Legado del Fantasma has been drafted to SmackDown. So the LWO Santos Escobar feud is finally over. Weeks and weeks of the same matches are put to rest. They're on separate brands. Then Raw went ahead and picked Drew McIntyre, which is a huge signing. Of course, he is injured at the moment, but he's got a match with CM Punk at any point. Now it's looking like probably Clash of the Castle is when that's going to happen. You got to keep Drew and CM Punk together at this point. They are awesome. They are one of the best things going on right now. Something I wasn't expecting, Shinsuke Nakamura got drafted to SmackDown. I thought he was a great candidate to go down to NXT. It's still possible. I'm glad he's off of Raw because I feel like he had a great amount of run at Raw and it's time for him to move to a new brand with some new faces. So Shinsuke heading over there is good, but I hope he spends some time in NXT too. Now this one's interesting. The Judgment Day got drafted to Raw, but it did not include Rhea Ripley, which is crazy because you can still, and injured wrestlers have still been drafted. Seth Rollins was drafted. Who else? Drew McIntyre is drafted. CM Punk is drafted. These guys are injured and they're still getting drafted, but Rhea Ripley has not been drafted, was not drafted, and wasn't included in the Judgment Day graphics. So kind of weird. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. Whatever. I don't know what's up with her, but obviously the Judgment Day had to stay together. Naomi got drafted to SmackDown as well. I wouldn't have minded her going to Raw, but she got to SmackDown pretty recently, so she still needs some time there. Now, seriously, one of the best parts of the draft, we all saw it coming. Ilya Dragunov got drafted to Raw. The reaction was awesome. People cannot wait. Obviously, the feuds with superstars like Gunther, like Sami Zayn, like, I don't know, Sheamus, like Drew McIntyre, CM Punk maybe. A lot of cool stuff for Ilya down the road. Who knows? A lot of dream matches over there. Can't wait to see what he's got in the tank on the main roster. Another prediction I had correct. Chelsea Green and Piper Niven move over to SmackDown. They've worked with a lot of women on the Raw roster, so them getting a new environment makes sense for them too. It's gonna suck though because Samantha Irvin will no longer be announcing Chelsea Green, which is a rough thing for WWE. Here's a draft pick I did not enjoy. Raw retained the New Day. Listen, they've been on Raw for a long time and they have a match every gosh darn week, but they're feuding with the same guys. And Gunther and Imperium didn't go anywhere, so they're just gonna keep feuding with Gunther, I'm assuming, and keep running the circle around each other. It's getting a little old to me already. I would have liked the New Day to go to SmackDown, but whatever. And speaking of SmackDown tag teams, SmackDown picks and retains Pretty Deadly. Again, another another tag team that fits well over there, makes a lot of sense. Them changing brands wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but they're pretty solid on SmackDown. Another big surprise, one of which I predicted again. My predictions were kind of on point this year. Lyra Valkyria got drafted to Raw. A big potential surprise for some people, but I think she's ready for the Raw roster. There's a lot of great women on the Raw roster for her to go up against. She's got Becky, she's got Liv, she's got a plethora of women to fight and start some feuds with. Cannot wait for that. A lot of history there. Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell get drafted to SmackDown. I'm excited for them to get some new scenery as well. They've been on Raw a lot. Also, they have an interesting kind of momentum, if you want to call it that, as of late, so we'll see what they end up doing over there. Again, I think that Jade and Bianca are going to win the Women's Tag Team Championship, so those are going to be on SmackDown, and there's some opportunity there for potentially Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell to go for those. This was a weird one. The Final Testament got drafted to Raw. I guess I thought that NXT could draft brands. I will find if that's the case tomorrow, but I guess that's not what it's looking like. Final Testament getting drafted to Raw is nice. I'm glad they're separating them and the Street Profits because that was getting boring as well. There wasn't really too much of a story there. It was just kind of like a random I hate you, you hate me, whatever. Them on Raw will be nice, but I do think they should still go down to NXT, and I think they're going to be down in NXT to get some time in and some run. In the final round, SmackDown drafted DIY. A lot of tag teams got moved around, so DIY to SmackDown gives them some new opponents, them an opportunity to go face A-Town Down Under. They'll probably deliver some bangers. That's exciting for the SmackDown brand. Then Raw went ahead and picked Bronson Reed. I didn't love that. I wanted Bronson Reed on SmackDown. I feel like he's wrestled a lot of people on Raw, but I guess he's in this current race for the Intercontinental Championship, so keeping him on Raw makes a lot of sense right now. With SmackDown's final pick, a big surprise, they got Blair Davenport from NXT. A very wholesome moment if you guys were watching, and a great pickup for SmackDown. They've got a lot of great women over there to wrestle and compete for that women's championship, so shout out to Blair. And to round out the draft, Dijak to Raw, and that was a great one because Dijak is main roster ready, I believe. I'm excited to see him on Raw. He does kind of have LA Knight vibes, so I didn't want them on the same brand, but him being on Raw makes sense. He just kind of looks like LA Knight. Like, there's a little bit of similarities there, so him being on Raw is cool. If they were on the same brand, I feel like it would have been a little bit too obvious, but them being separate will give them their own unique shine and their own unique ways. Obviously, LA Knight is LA Knight at this point, but Dijak coming to Raw is very exciting. I'm excited to see what feuds he might have. Imagine like a Dijak and Drew McIntyre feud. I could see that being great. Sheamus is another guy on Raw that he can go up against. Maybe run it back with Braun Breaker on the Raw roster and they can work up together. And hold on, there were some last minute picks for the WWE draft. The Creed brothers and Ivy Nile get drafted to Raw. Okay. Giovanni Vinci has been drafted to SmackDown on his own. So are we gonna see a new gimmick from Giovanni Vinci? I think it makes a lot of sense. Maybe throwing it back to his NXT days. That's gonna be exciting. I didn't know what was up for him. I don't know if they wrote him off TV. I don't know if he was gonna go back to NXT, but him and a SmackDown on his own. Very curious to see the plan for him. The New Cash Republic is drafted to Raw, shaking up the tag team division a little bit. That's nice. They've been on SmackDown for a little bit now. Tegan Knox to SmackDown as well. Apollo Crews gets drafted to SmackDown as well. Kaden Carter and Katana Chance get drafted to Raw. Natalya gets drafted to Raw. I would expect her to spend some time in NXT as well. And it looks like the final pick of the entire WWE draft was Odyssey Jones back to Raw. Now, this person was drafted to Raw before, and they did absolutely zero with him. So I don't know why they did this. I don't know if they did it for the memes. I don't know if they're actually going to use Odyssey, but we'll have to wait and see. A lot of picks. Obviously, there were more rounds, more draft picks this draft night, but night 2 was a banger. Way better than night 1 because night 1, there was going to be a lot of retained superstars, obviously. So very excited for the future of the WWE. I'm excited to see what happens with NXT as well, but let me know in the comments down below, which one of these draft picks did you predict correctly? Which one of these draft picks do you like, do not like? Round 2 was a banger. Raw looks stacked. SmackDown looks pretty stacked too, I'm not going to lie. And NXT's got a whole different era of wrestlers coming in hot. I'm excited to see what happens down there. If I were to rate the WWE draft as a whole this year, I'd give it a 8 out of 10. An 8 out of 10 is a pretty good grade. There weren't that many huge changes, but I did really appreciate a lot of the NXT call-ups, a lot of the storyline breakups, like the LWO stuff, the Street Profits stuff. So that kind of stuff was cool. Kind of a bummer that champions couldn't switch brands. It kind of killed any huge surprises and big changes, but not a big deal. 8 out of 10 in my opinion. I still very much enjoyed it. I'm a fan. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Subscribe if you guys enjoy this WWE content. Make sure to follow me on TikTok at gilymania. We've been posting over there. there. So make sure you guys are checking it out. And follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/JTGilly. If you guys want to watch along with me for Raw, SmackDown, NXT, pay-per-views, all that good stuff, check me out on Twitch. I appreciate all the love and support. This has been a lot of fun. Shout out to the WWE Draft. GG's.